So Star Trek, I mean, if you haven't seen it, it's a really fascinating show. They made a few movies too. There's a character named Spock who really kind of demonstrates exactly what I've been talking about with chaos and order. So the Vulcan race is all about logic. Now what is logic? Well, it's cold-bloody reasoning, but totally divorced from passion. And this is where we can begin to see the two forces of chaos and order kind of represented here between the Vulcans and, well, the humans, which is us. Totally irrational, flawed beings, which we all are, of course. But Spock is a really interesting character because he's half Vulcan. In that sense, Spock is, interestingly enough, a very relatable character because fundamentally, he's always trying to be as reasonable as possible all of the time. Now you go and try to be completely reasonable all of the time, right? It's completely ridiculous, unless you're like super high in conscientiousness and like really low in negative emotions. Like most people really have a hard time functioning so high up all of the time. I mean, people need a break once in a while, eh? So Star Trek the Motion Picture really puts Spock in an interesting position. We see at the beginning of the movie, Spock is on his home planet, and he's about to be like ceremoniously crowned as having purged everything except logic from his being. That is to say, he's destroyed all of his internal chaos, or we might say even destroyed all of his negative emotion. And we can easily take issue with this whole Vulcan system because, well, one of the things we deal with in clinical psychology is really trying to integrate, you could say, the weak parts of our being, or to put it another way, to come to terms with the chaos within you and not let it destroy your damn life. But that is a far cry from what Spock is trying to do in this scene. So basically what's happening is that Vulcans are somewhat telepathic, by the way. Spock is interrupted from his ceremony with a sense of something very powerful from afar. The other Vulcans read Spock's mind and say that what's calling him from afar is reaching to his human side, and that is his chaotic side. And we later find out that this power is in essence a being of totally pure, perfect logic, or you could say it is the perfect representation of order. Now we end up finding out that this perfectly ordered, logical being, which is something like kind of what the Vulcans aspire to, turns out to be an alien that is from the race of machines. It's not the normal, weird-looking kind of alien. It's actually non-biological. Now the interesting thing is that this totally pure, logical, essentially a big computer system, calls to Spock's human side. Now let's think about that for a minute. Why would a purely logical being appeal more to his chaotic side than to his orderly side? You know, they say opposites attract, and when it comes to relationships, especially romantic relationships, it doesn't make much sense to have somebody that is exactly like you. So I think what is happening here is that Spock is trying to identify with and become fully Vulcan to purge all of the chaos from within himself, but he feels the power of this machine intelligence, and it's so powerfully logical, so orderly, that it is even more Vulcan than the Vulcans. And so it contrasts with his chaotic human side, and so to a certain degree attracts him to it. So eventually the machine alien duplicates a person on board and makes a machine out of them and sends that machine to now interact with the human beings on board the Enterprise. That's the name of the spaceship the humans are on in this story. It is, Star Trek's all about the voyages of the Enterprise. Well, conveniently, the person that was abducted by the aliens, the person who's made into a machine, just so happens to have had a prior romantic relationship with one of the crewmates. And so that particular crewmate actually sees his old love within this machine, with this doppelganger that the alien put up here. To make a long story short, the machine ends up joining with the crewmate so that the chaotic human can join with the orderly machine and finally grow into something bigger. You know, and it's really amazing, and that's a lot like what happens when we see a breakthrough in clinical psychology. We see that we see like the emerging harmony between the two sides of our being, of chaos and order, finally coming together, you know? It's really remarkable if you've ever seen that. So basically, throughout the story, Spock sort of takes all of this in and essentially learns to appreciate and integrate his human side into his psyche. He holds the hand of his old friend, who, by the way, is Captain Kirk, and he says that this simple feeling of holding hands with your friend was simply beyond the comprehension of the machine-based alien. And so with stories like this can be really powerful because they call to our fundamental nature and help us to examine things in metaphor that usually is pretty easy to decipher.